Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
If you're a parent of, let's say, a child under the age of, say, 21, you got a lot going on there in helping getting them ready for life. And if they're much younger, getting them ready for the next school challenge and all of that. The challenge is much deeper when you have a child who has a lot of issues, a lot of challenges already. And we're going to talk about some of that today and really had to empower your children to be just emotionally strong, resilient, being able to take on different situations where they can feel that they've moved their life forward, even just a little bit. She helps parents and their children with this all the time, parenting challenging children. And I don't know anybody that does what she does. And even the way she does it. Dr. Michelle Alden is back with us. How are you today?
Doing great. Glad to be back.
It's good to have you here. We've talked a little bit about your book, but we've not really dove into it deeper, which I'd love to do today. And I see it in the background there. Is the name of the book Parenting Emotionally Distressed Kids?
Yes. And then the subtitle is Build a Bridge to Better Behaviors.
Mm-hmm. Honestly,
which a lot of us want, right?
the subtitle is the one that I remembered because it's really what you want as a parent. When we talk about preparing our kids to be resilient or even emotionally resilient, how does that look? How do we define what that would be when you apply it to a child?
Well, and we kind of use that word sometimes like, oh, kids are so resilient. They can just handle whatever, trauma or thing has happened. And sometimes I think that we forget that maybe that resilience is a skill that has to be built. And that I really believe that even in the things that happen and the things that are happening in the world, like kids are affected. It comes out in different ways. So when I'm talking about building resilient kids, it's not kids that just seem unaffected by everything that's going on. It's more about kids that are able to work through their emotions, able to work through the problems that they're facing, conflict resolution. I think all of that really builds a lot. And I think that it comes a lot from us as parents modeling that adaptability and modeling how to be emotionally regulated, which is hard because we're not always so resilient ourselves,
Completely. And our kids learn from us. So what should we be showing them? And when a situation arises for a parent in a general life situation, maybe not involving the child, should we always keep our emotions in check and be completely aware of what our kids might be seeing?
Yes and no. I mean, we want to have open communication about emotions and what we're feeling and allow space for that. Like, that, hey, I've been disappointed or I'm frustrated or, whatever it is, but we're also modeling that, that ability to regulate and to how we're going to work through it. And so I think that there's a lot of parents that in trying to be open, maybe it's more just venting, right? Like, oh, I'm not hiding anything from my kids. They know exactly how I feel about everything. But that's a lot for kids to handle when all the grown-ups are in turmoil about things that are happening in the world or in our country or, whatever. And we just think like we're just having these open conversations, but how much of it are the kids absorbing and seeing that, wow, even the adults don't know what to do?
Is it truly a delicate balance whereby you want your kids to see the real you, but you also don't want them to get deep in the weeds of a situation, let's say a personal situation, let's say, divorce is involved, or let's say there's a money situation. I see it like as a delicate balance because you don't want to shield them from it. You want them to know because they're going to pick up on it anyway. They're going to know, mom or dad is feeling something, but I don't know what it is. It seemed, and depending on the age of the child and also their emotional IQ, how to deal with that. It seems like it seems delicate.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it, and I talk about this a lot in the book about building structure. And
Mm,
and I think that's where the structure really comes into place because we still want our kids to know that we're not just like everything's not just up in the air. Even if we're having many problems, even if we're having, we have to produce some security there for our kids. And so it's not fake it till you make it, but it's knowing, having a plan, knowing what you're going to do. It's like, this is really hard, but I've got this and I'm going to help you. Even if behind the scenes you're kind of falling apart, that's okay.
mhm.
But I do think that kids need to be shielded from that in that sense, as far as just, I think ultimately they still need to know, like, I know that when kids look back, what are they going to remember? Like, yeah, money was tight, but we always were able to make something work, or something
Hmm.
like that.
Well, I guess that leads us into problem solving skills within our children. That's part of your book as well. How do you define that problem solving?
Well, I I kind of think of it in a picture, right? Like a child comes to you, they're having a meltdown or they're having a big conflict with their friends, or and or they even felt like they're being, bullied at school, or whatever. And instead of us taking that and solving it for them, or saying like, I don't like this that's happening to you, that's fine, like we can say that. But then when we move in and we start fixing it for them, I think that's where I really am encouraging parents to help their kids to develop the skills to start to think about how they're going to handle that problems. I like the approach of, when a child's telling you about, whatever it is that's happening, to be able to kind of take that step back and be able to like be curious about it, like, oh wow, what are you going to do?
Mm,
Instead of, and I think it's good to identify with the emotion of it first, like, wow, that sounds really hard. That's super stressful, and not go right into fix it mode for sure. But coming to that place where we can ask our kids, like, what are you going to do? Like, I can see you're really frustrated, or I can see you're upset. What can we do about it? And the timing is important. I talk about that a lot in the book because we have to be
mm.
emotionally regulated enough to consider a question like that. So emotional regulation is a big part in building resilience. Like those of us that can handle our emotions in a lot of different situations are going to be more resilient in a lot of different situations.
What you just said, very powerful in that, yeah, I roll it like all of us here today, thinking about how we parent. And I don't recall the last time I even said to one of my kids, well, how are you going to handle that? And that's really cool to say that because now you're throwing it on them. And of course, if they need help, but you're allowing them to take care of the situation. And I believe many of us as parents don't do that because we're parents. We want to do everything for our kids. We want to make sure they're happy. But it's, I guess the E word comes in, enabler, and you don't want to be that.
Well, and the other thing is that, like, if our kids are really stressed and then we're getting really stressed because of, like, we feel like it's our responsibility to fix it, or we just feel bad for them, right?
Yes.
And when we're stressed, we don't, our brain is starting to like only come up with maybe one option. We can only see it one way. We get very narrow in our focus. So when we ask that question, like, what can we do about it? What should we do? Like, what are you going to do? How are you going to handle that?
Mm.
It allows for more problem solving to happen. And it kind of tells our brain, like, calm down. We've got this. Let's, and it instead of just being one or two options, there's hundreds of options. There's lots of ways. And so we kind of want to encourage our kids, like when they get really distraught and upset, that to open up the doors, of what could happen.
The language is key. I'm detecting from you. So for example, and again, it depends on the child. They're all different. Ages are all different. But if it fits, to say something like, well, how are you going to handle that? What do you think you should do about that? As opposed to, well, what do you think we should do? So now you're already involved in it. And now you got one foot in the enabling door. If you can, let them figure it out. Of course, you're right there if they need you. Again, it really depends on your child and their situation. But so many times we just want to swoop in as the savior, and maybe that's not the best way to do it.
Yeah, and sometimes that swooping in is for us, right?
100%. Oh my gosh! Thank you for saying that. It's also the guilt release. Like, I feel bad. Let's say you're working 3 jobs and now your child has a challenge or a situation and you feel bad that you haven't given them enough attention. And now maybe it's escalated with a friend or whatever it might be. So now you want to fix the problem and then take it off the plate and move on. And instead of saying, releasing your guilt, let it go, and then let them try to figure it out for themselves. Again, you'll always be their safety net, no matter what. You know that, and they kind of know that, but it is really cool, when you can say that to your kid, like, hey, what do you think you should do? Like, it feels good to even say that.
Well, and I also want to say, because I think it can kind of sound like we're just like tossing it back to them and let them, figure it out. This is collaborative. Like, this is something you're doing with your child, and it builds connection. And so it's when you throw it back to them and you're saying, I wonder what you're going to do about that. Like, you still are in it. Like, you're still there with them, because some of their problem solving skills may be pretty bad, right? Like, I remember I was working with this kid. We were talking about a situation that happened, and he ended up pushing the kid. I don't think he hit him. I think he pushed him. It was a school bus thing.
Yep.
And so I was asking him, we had talked about, I just wanted to hear from his side, like what happened. So it was a lot of blame, right? Like, this kid did this and this kid did that, and then towards the end of it, I said, so if you could do it over, if we could go back and you could do it over, like, what do you think you would do differently? And he said, I would have punched him a lot sooner. So we can think that we're being, brilliant and, all these great ideas. And so we want to stay in it enough to help them, like, oh, okay, well, what else, could we do? If this kid bothers you tomorrow, what can we do so that you don't get in trouble? So if he's really the problem here, then, how do you want to handle it? And they may say, like, I'm not going to sit by him, or I'm not going to talk to him ever again. It's like, okay, that sounds interesting, and we're not holding their feet to the fire with it, but we're just allowing their brain to, like, realize, like, there's other options.
Right. Or again, you're not letting them go, but like, if you say, well, what do you think you're going to do about that? Well, I'm going to go back there and beat the blank out of them. Well, then now the parenting portion of you comes in. Well, that's not the best idea, because then you could get suspended. And what's that going to solve? So I'm seeing it as throw the ball to them, but you still have your hand on the ball, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we're still in the game, right?
We're still in the game. Exactly. From your book, which is fantastic, what are some of the other things that we can learn, or a couple of takeaways?
Yeah, there's one part of the book where I talk about, I call it the mountain of escalation. And it talks about when kids are getting escalated, kind of, and I work with kids that are already emotionally distressed. They have diagnosis, they've had trauma. Yeah. So their level of regulation is not, they're starting at a higher level. And so in the mountain of escalation, a lot of parents will say, like, well, my kid just goes from 0 to 60 in a nanosecond. And so when we look at that mountain of escalation, it kind of talks about the signs of when a child is escalating. And when parents can be more observant about that, you realize, like, oh, this actually started back here when they were pacing or when they started talking really fast or, whatever it is. And then what I love about it is on the other side of the mountain of escalation, it talks about what you can do when your child's at those different levels. It gives you some practical things to do at each level that your child is at. And then you can get a free download of that mountain of escalation from the book. So,
Wow.
you request it and we send it to you. So
Awesome. Great. And would that be, here's the signs of escalation. Is it kind of in that, territory, what to observe, how to know that it's getting a little heavier?
Yeah, it's like, it'll say like, when they're at the lower levels, they might be playing quietly, kind of in their own world. Their body's calm. And then what you can do, so there's positive things too, like let them play, don't interrupt them, but watch for when they're starting to transition, or move. And then it goes all the way up to when you might have to use a crisis plan or, when they are getting too high on the mountain, what we have to do to help them to calm down. So it's the whole chapter kind of talks about each part of it and a little bit more than even on the chart. But the chart is really handy. A lot of people put them on their refrigerator and even the kids can look at it. I had in our schools where I live, a lot of times they'll use like a color chart. You're getting in the red, you're yellow. So I've had parents color the mountain of escalation so that it matches a little bit of what they're doing at school. But I just love if this is happening, then this is what we can do. Because that feeling as a parent when you don't know what to do, and it's, I think, one of the hardest feelings of all.
See, I'm learning a lot here, as we all are, because I wouldn't know whether I should show my hand in terms of the chart of escalation to my kids. But now I see it in a different way. They need to understand it. And it reminds me of, ever been to a hospital medical facility and they have that chart of 10, the pain scale, and 1 is like smiley face, 10 is like, and it's all different colors. Kind of that what it reminds me of, in terms of escalation. Do you feel that many parents don't see the earlier signs of the escalation? And then
for sure.
And it gets, let's say it's 10 steps. Now it gets now by the time they pick up on it, we're already at 5 and there's almost no turning back at that point.
Yes, exactly. And that's why it feels like, they were playing there quietly and then all of a sudden they just, exploded, or the 2 kids were playing fine.
Wow.
And then they got into a big fight. It's like, there's things that were happening all along. And I encourage in the book, especially if you have a child that's, having a lot of meltdowns, emotionally distressed, and you want better behaviors, you're going to have to be invested in being closer to what's happening.
Wow.
So that you can notice those things.
That's huge. Seriously, most of us don't even think about that happening. And is it mostly detectable? Seeing those, if you really observe, follow the book, follow your advice, are there always signs, levels of escalation before it gets to that point?
I have found that to be true. And most of the time when I've worked in the homes, parents are telling me that there's no signs. And I go in and of course I'm not in the mix of it. So it's a lot easier as an observer to point out and see the patterns or see, so when I have parents start to stay closer, they start to notice it too. And it's not just to stop it from happening, it's to notice so that we can help the kids to notice. Like, it's so important in their own regulation for them to realize, like, I'm getting frustrated. I need to take a break.
What would you say, Michelle, is the 1 or 2 things? And again, every child, every situation, every age is different. But what are we missing for the the greater view of all of this? What are we missing? What are parents not recognizing, not realizing that can improve parenting a challenging child?
Wow, that's a big question. What first came to my mind was just, I think that our kids can go through the challenge, even if it's a personal meltdown, of learning how to bring themselves kind of back into the realm where they can at least use the thinking part of their brain. When you have a kid has a lot of, meltdowns and tantrums and all of that, it can start to feel like I'm just going to do everything I can to keep this from happening. So parents use a lot of distraction until it doesn't work, right? But for the most part, like we found that like screens are a great distraction, and but it doesn't keep the next meltdown from happening or help the child to know what to do. And so I think that's that whole realm of knowing how to get yourself calm, how to help your kids to get calm, like that is a huge part of parenting emotionally distressed kids and actually of being human.
Would you say for the most part that our children need to go through it, need to walk through it, and experience it and see what it's like and figure it out when they're, as opposed to, the helicopter parent and, now the child has not even figured it out. Sort of like, you go bowling, let's say you're not a great bowler, maybe you're a child bowling, and you have the bumpers up in the lane and the ball is still going down there, sort of, but you're the parent, you're the bumpers up there. So you're there, but you're letting them get down the lane, as opposed to, no, I'll throw the ball for you, don't worry about that.
Right. Yeah. I do think they need to hit against some of those things, and we don't, I say we don't want to, but I know some parents do, but we really, really don't want our kids, we can't build a utopia world where they never have any challenges or never have to face anything hard. That's not what we're meant to do here. I really believe we are meant to go through challenges. We have, weird things that happen in our journey that we didn't expect, and it's okay. Nothing's gone wrong. We're just meant to learn how to overcome and get better and grow.
Can't do it alone as a parent. And I'm seeing this, there's, you can reach out to other parents and get their feedback, family members, but they are not qualified. Being another parent doesn't make you qualified for all of this kind of stuff. And that's where you come in. Again, I don't know anybody. I've never heard of anybody offering what you offer. Yeah. Okay. So there are coaches, parenting coaches, all of that, but not specifically for emotionally challenged children, those going through a lot of different things. And it starts with your book and your website and just making that connection. How do we find you, Michelle?
Yeah, so you can order the book on Amazon. That's one way you can find me, and it has contact information there. You can get the downloads, all of that. A lot of people read the book and then want more coaching from that. So sure. That's great. You can find out about getting more coaching on my website, parentingchallengingkids.com. And there's a get started page where you can sign up for a free consultation. You can sign up for our coaching group. It's called the Playroom. Lots of help available.
Yeah. And as you identified a moment ago, there are lots of free things in the book, like we just spoke about. That's one of many, right? There's a few in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love it. Yeah. Once again, your website, please share.
Yeah. parentingchallengingkids.com.
Excellent. Thank you for all your insight, Michelle. Learned a lot. I got to start asking questions within my kids. Got to get on that. I really mean that. I mean, I spent time with my son. He just turned 19 last night, had a great night. And they all go through things, but I never look at it as to allow them to be even more empowered with the question. And that's just one little piece of what we can learn from you. And I appreciate it. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Adopt US Kids presents Multiple Choice Parenting.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes?
How could he do this to you? And for Sheila, she has split ends.
B, console her?
Oh, sweetie, This is going to happen a lot. 4, maybe 5 more times before you get married.
C. Take charge.
Got to get this all straightened out. Give a little talking to, man to man, mano a mano. Hey, Steve! Is now a good time? No? Okay, no problem. Bye.
Or D. Help her find a new boyfriend.
I know a great place to meet boys. The internet. Nice, single boys. Never mind. How about some ice cream?
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.